Okay, so you want to understand binge drinking right.
Absolutely.
Not just the drinking is bad lecture,
Mm-hmm.
but a real deep dive into what's going on.
Yeah,
Let's unpack this because I found some pretty eye-opening stuff in these sources.
absolutely. And that's our goal here, to go beyond the buzzwords and really equip you with a solid understanding of binge drinking,
Oh,
the why, the how, and what it all means.
perfect. So let's start with the basics.
Okay.
Our sources define binge drinking as getting your blood alcohol content, or BAC,
Right.
to zero point zero 0.08 or higher within a 2-hour window.
And just to clarify, BAC is basically a measure of how much alcohol is in your bloodstream.
Okay.
And zero point zero 0.08 is the legal limit for driving in many places, which should give you an idea of how impaired you are at that level.
Right. It's not just about having a good time at that point.
Exactly.
Our sources say for men, that's usually 5 or more drinks in those 2 hours.
Right.
And for women, it's 4 or more.
Yeah.
But the thing that really jumped out at me,
Mm-hmm.
4 out of 5 binge drinks are consumed by men.
Wow.
Did you expect that kind of difference?
It's a stark statistic, isn't it? And it really makes you think about the societal factors at play here.
Yeah.
It's almost like there's this unspoken pressure on guys to hold their liquor, which can be pretty dangerous.
For sure. And that pressure speaks to something our sources highlight,
Hmm.
that binge drinking goes way beyond just wanting to party.
Yeah.
It's way more complex than that.
Exactly. There are all these social layers to it. Alcohol can definitely loosen inhibitions,
Right.
make you feel more confident, more social. But there's also that pressure to keep up with friends, maybe even try to impress people or seek attention.
Well, tell me about it. I remember this one time back in college.
Mm.
Let's just say I learned the hard way that trying to outdrink everyone at a party is not a recipe for success or a fun next morning.
A valuable lesson for sure. And it highlights the very real pressure that exists. But we also have to acknowledge the other side of the coin.
Okay.
Sometimes people binge drink to escape problems, to numb out.
Right.
And that can be a really slippery slope, potentially even a sign of something more serious.
You're talking about addiction,
Yeah.
right? Because our sources actually dive into whether binge drinking is basically the same thing as alcoholism.
Right. And it's important to understand the distinction.
Okay.
Not everyone who binge drinks is struggling with alcohol dependence,
Right.
but there's definitely a strong link.
So it's more like binge drinking increases your chances of developing a problem down the line.
Exactly. Think of it like a path. Binge drinking doesn't automatically lead to alcohol use disorder, which is the clinical term for what we often call alcoholism.
Right.
But it significantly increases the chances of ending up there, especially if it starts at a young age.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
It's not a guarantee, but a risk factor.
Right.
Kind of like how eating a lot of greasy food doesn't mean you'll automatically have a heart attack.
Yeah.
But it definitely ups your chances.
That's a great analogy. And it brings up another important point from our sources.
Okay.
Even if you don't identify as someone with a drinking problem, it's still worth questioning your own relationship with alcohol.
Really?
Have you ever stopped and thought about why you drink or how much?
It's like a gut check moment, right?
Mm.
Asking yourself, am I comfortable with my own habits?
Precisely. And speaking of gut checks, our sources don't shy away from the very real risks associated with binge drinking,
Right.
even if it's a one-time thing.
Yeah. And this is where it gets pretty serious.
Yeah.
We all know there are risks,
Right.
but the sources get into the specifics, and it's kind of scary.
It's important to be aware of these risks because we're not just talking about a bad hangover.
Yeah.
Binge drinking can lead to some immediate and very serious consequences like accidents, injuries, alcohol poisoning.
Yeah.
You could even end up blacking out and putting yourself in a very vulnerable position.
Oh, wow. Those are some heavy consequences. And it's easy to forget about them when you're caught up in the moment.
Exactly. And that's why it's crucial to keep them in mind.
Right.
And even if you manage to avoid those immediate dangers, the long-term health risks are nothing to sneeze at.
Oh, really?
We're talking about an increased risk of heart disease,
Uh-huh.
liver problems, even certain types of cancer.
So basically, binge drinking is like playing Russian roulette with your health,
Yeah,
both in the short term and the long run.
that's a powerful way to put it. And the thing is, these risks aren't just hypothetical.
Right.
They're very real, and they can have a ripple effect on your relationships, your career, your entire life.
Okay, so we've covered the why, the how, and the risks. But what about the now what? What if someone listening to this wants to cut back on their drinking?
That's where this deep dive takes a hopeful turn.
Okay.
Because our sources don't just leave you with the scary stuff.
Right.
They offer some really practical advice for cutting back if that's what you choose to do.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm all ears.
Yeah.
What are some of the standout tips?
Well, one of the most important things they emphasize is avoiding those triggering situations.
Okay.
If you know you tend to overdrink at parties, maybe skip a few until you feel more in control.
Right.
Or if you have certain friends who always pressure you to drink more, it might be time to reevaluate those relationships.
It's about setting yourself up for success, not for another round of, I can't believe I did that again.
Exactly. And speaking of success, the sources also talk about the importance of staying motivated.
Okay.
Remind yourself why you want to cut back. Is it for your health, your relationships, your mental clarity?
Yeah.
Whatever it is, keep those reasons front and center.
Because willpower alone can only get you so far, especially when you're facing down a Friday night with friends.
You got it. And that's where having a support system can make all the difference, which the sources also highlight.
Okay.
Talk to a trusted friend or family member. Find a therapist. Join a support group, whatever feels right for you.
Right.
Remember, seeking help is not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of strength.
It shows you're serious about making a change.
Exactly. And change is possible. It's a journey, not a destination.
So it's okay if there are bumps along the way.
Absolutely. And that's actually a perfect segue to another piece of advice from the sources.
Okay.
Don't be afraid to seek professional help.
Right.
Therapists can help you identify those underlying triggers, develop coping mechanisms, and create a personalized plan for change. It's like having a coach in your corner guiding you every step of the way.
So you're not alone in this.
Yeah.
And there are resources out there to help you navigate this journey.
Precisely. It's about finding what works for you and taking it one day at a time.
This has been so interesting, like we really got into it, you know?
Yeah, it's like putting together a puzzle, all these different pieces.
Totally. We talked about what binge drinking actually is, those reasons people do it, way more complicated than I thought, and all those risks. Man, those are intense.
Right, and hopefully eye-opening for people. But we also found some hope in those sources.
For sure, that you don't have to be stuck if you don't want to be.
It's all about making choices once you know what's what.
Exactly. So if someone's listening, thinking about all this now, what's the thing you want them to walk away with?
That's a good question. I guess it all comes down to, how do you feel about your own drinking now? Maybe you're good, but maybe this made you think twice about some things. And that's okay. That's kind of the point.
To just take a minute, reflect on it all.
Exactly. And you don't have to have all the answers, but you at least have more info now to make those choices for yourself.
Love that.
Yeah.
So there you have it. That's our deep dive into the world of binge drinking. Thanks for listening, and remember,
Your relationship with alcohol is your own, and knowledge is power.